What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Don't Give Up the Ship podcast. It's episode 55. This one is... I've been looking forward to releasing this one for a long time. This one was a listener to the podcast, put me in contact with some people, and one of them was James, who was the Command Master Chief of the USS COLE when it was bombed off the coast of Yemen. And I mean, this was before my time even, but it is something that's kind of fresh in my mind in a way. And it was an incredible conversation that I'm really excited to share with you guys. Before I get to that, just a kind of state of the union, quick update for me. I've gotten a couple of messages asking, and radiation's about halfway done. Got about 2.5 weeks left. I should be done July 9th, I think. Side effects suck. I'm not going to complain too much because of I'm in a great place compared to a lot of people that I'm watching get treated in the same facility. So it's really hard to complain, but I'm doing all right. It's miserable in its way, but it's just a grind, and it'll be over soon. So when it's done, I'll be full up around in about a month and be back to my normal tempo, I guess. But you won't see a ton of new content coming directly from me after the next few episodes. But by the time the stuff we have sandbagged gets all released, I should be good and be back to recording and stuff. So that's what's going on with that. And if you guys would, to help out the podcast, and I always forget to put this up front, but it really helps when you guys like, share, subscribe, review us on iTunes, all that stuff. Just help get the platform spread and noticed, and it feeds the algorithms, and we don't have a advertising budget of any kind, so it does help. So if you could just like, share, subscribe, review us on iTunes and all the other platforms, and we would really appreciate it. And with that, we'll get to the interview. All right, so just like we talked about a minute ago, man, just give me your background, like your history in the Navy and your experience that led up to you being the CMC on the COLE, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, almost 30 years in the Navy. I did multiple platforms, started out as a corpsman working at Great Lakes, and then did a couple tours with the Marine Corps. One of them was supporting Beirut when the bombing happened in '83. Did multiple platform ships from Gator freighters, a couple flat tops. I went on aviation medicine, did squadron. I went independent duty corpsman and did a mine sweep in Desert Storm and Shield, which was pretty interesting story there.
Yeah. Oh, geez.
Especially got there hunting mines in the Persian Gulf. Then after IDC, decided to go at one point to Command Master Chief program. And that's when I finally didn't think I'd make Master Chief, to be honest with you. You know, some of us sometimes don't think of that. And a lot of people helped me get there. And that was a tough decision to make, was to, give up the rate, put that star in the rating badge, and but I felt like, I wanted to do what would help the Navy and sailors most, and I felt that was it in representing the command as a Master Chief. Yeah. And being the sounding board to the captain. And so I got assigned to COLE, and that's how I wound up on COLE after my first assignment, as a matter of fact, as a Command Master Chief. And we'll talk about that. Yeah. Then after that incident with COLE, with the attack on COLE in October of 2000, I went ahead and took an assignment to decompress at Sigonella. Okay. And ironically, some of our guys went through SIG. And I wound up in Great Lakes, where I started my Navy career as Command Master Chief of the base, and nice. Working for Navy Region Midwest for Admiral Rondo until I retired in 2006. Okay. Fun fact, I was born in 1983, so there you go. You really make me feel young.
When you said 83, I was just like, oh yeah, hey, that's my birthday. So what, I'm curious, what can you go into the story about, first Beirut and then the Minesweeper? Because that sounds super interesting.
Well, Beirut, I wasn't actually the boots on the ground with the BAS. That was 8th Marines. I was with the 24th Medical Battalion. I actually was with 2nd Battalion, 2nd Marines, and then they asked for some help.
Yeah.
And sometimes they do that, like ships, they'll borrow people.
Yeah, yeah.
So I said, hey, an opportunity, that's what we joined for. And
Yep.
bottom line is the dentists, believe it or not, were the ones that did triage after that barracks got hit, and we lost over 270 people.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard that they have some responsibilities that you don't expect them to have when they're in areas like that.
And, I lost the docs and the corpsmen. They were all in that battalion aid station in that building. So it was actually the dentists, dental techs that were doing triage. And then eventually the med battalion, we some were ashore, some of us came ashore. By the time we got to that, though, it was just more of a cleanup, it was pretty bad. It was pretty bad. And then the mine sweep, years later, I just made chief on a MSO 490 USS Leader. And that was an interesting initiation. I'll leave it at that. Because in 1990, 91, things were done a lot different in initiating our chiefs then.
Yeah, the CMC I had on the submarine I made chief on told us stories. He was a 3rd tour cob on a submarine and had done a CMC tour in between. So like he made chief back in the 90s. I think it was a little later than that, but still, like, it was a lot different.
You still you still ate stuff I won't talk about.
Yep.
And it was more physical than it is now. We obviously took the right turn or doing the right things today, because all that stuff did was more demeaning, and you didn't learn from that stuff like you do now.
Yep.
I'm glad we did make those changes through time.
Yeah, I
but
agree.
We spent some time when we went over our. Ironically, Cole was put on a heavy lift ship, and my first experience with one was the mine sweeps. 4 of us from Charleston. We were based out of Charleston. Were put afloat on the Blue Marlin, and she was sent over separate of the crew. We flew over and met her over there. They had like a skeleton crew for the ships to do soundings and whatnot, because they're wood ships,
Yeah.
And you got to watch the wood drying out for obvious reasons, so that they don't set off magnetic mines.
Yeah.
But we met her in Bahrain. We trained there until January of the 91, and we got woke up like 0:30 in the morning. We're going north, boys. And so we trained all that time to do mine hunting, and now the real deal.
Yeah.
And one of the things that stays with me, probably will forever, is we were escorting the Saudis. They had world-class mine sweeps, and they didn't get halfway up the Persian Gulf, and next thing you know, they're turning around heading home.
Wow.
And we still headed north in these old post-World War II era, because ours was built in 1949.
Jesus. I always heard that they were super old, but
our technology and money was not into mine sweeps in that time. And the only one we had was a new class, was that Avenger class, MCM1, the Avenger. Yep. And she got broke dick, man. New ships.
Yeah.
And they experimented, and they put these engines in there. They mixed
too many bells and whistles,
European with American stuff, and stuff's going to, and what happened was one of the sounding guys went by one of the main engines, and when they were running, and blew a piston, bottom line. So they had to figure out why the pistons were prematurely wearing and blew through the side of the engine wall. So here you got 3 late 1940, early 1950 mine sweeps going up there to do the business with the Japanese and the English, who had far better mine hunting technology than we did.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say completely, because we did have this ninja equipment in the evaluator room and the sweep, but here you had this state-of-the-art equipment in this old ship,
Yeah.
But we were behind Tripoli. And again, about 2 or 3 in the morning, and get this picture, man, she's leading the 3 mine sweeps, and she hits a mine in a minefield near the Durham oil fields up northern Persian Gulf. And some people have read or know about Tripoli hitting that mine. And, first thing you know, we go to GQ, because you could feel it in your rack. You could feel the concussion.
Yeah.
It was that powerful. But luckily, it didn't kill anybody. But we were initially looking for bodies, and then somebody got the smart idea to say, "Hey, we might want to be looking for mines, man."
Yeah.
there are these searchlights out looking for bodies. And so anyway, sure enough, buddy, we're in the middle of a contact slant magnetic minefield.
Oh my God.
And so we spent the whole day with EOD had boats come in and help as well. But that day, man, was hell. I mean, the whole day was hell, but there's a point where we came within inches of a 500-pound contact mine, World War II era kind of mine.
Did you guys see it?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
The Port Watch. Now this is like a 400-foot long. It's like a fishing boat size wood boat, man.
Jesus.
You know that. So if we hit this mine, we're all gone.
Yeah,
dude.
yeah.
But so the XO, and you'd have to know this guy. I won't give his name, but he was something else. But he gets on the damn 1MC. I'm back aft with the radio man. We're manning our station, and he yells out on the 1MC, "Brace for shock. We're all going to die."
Oh my God. The way to keep things calm, XO. Jesus.
Holy. There's stories about this guy, man. I'm going to tell you.
Man.
Matter of fact, there's one other story. Can I tell? With this guy when we were doing workups in the Persian Gulf before the war broke out. You know, we'd go out and do the mine hunting, and we'd also trying to do somewhat of a defense. You can't really defend that kind of boat too well.
Yeah.
But bottom line is, he had sandbags all over in his stateroom and 2 M14s loaded. Okay, this is how paranoid this guy was.
Wow.
So anyway, we have this GQ drill, and it was a mass conflag. You know, we're going to lose kind of thing. But so I'm down below a man in my station. I got like a really small medical, so mainly I was out topside, you know, helping and responding. But all of a sudden I hear Doc. And this is, obviously I was an IDC then, independent duty corpsman, up to the bridge. So I thought somebody was hurt, so I'm hauling ass up there and get to the bridge, and there's frickin' red smoke just coming out of the bridge. And I'm going, holy crap, what the hell? So here comes the XO out through all this damn red smoke, and his hair's blonde. His hair was frickin' orange, dude. He says, Doc, do you got some peroxide or something, man? I need to get this shit out of my hair.
That's hilarious.
So that was an experience. That whole tour over there during Desert Storm and Shield was something else, man. That, like you said, he really made it interesting.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
But
oh man,
so that's somewhat my experience. Other than the fact that we did have some Iranian boats come in. We were actually going through the Dura oil field sweeping. We had actually seen the platform shot up by the SEALs. It was eerie. These guys had plywood up for barriers, which that ain't going to stop around, man. So they were pretty destroyed. And but these gunboats started coming in on us, and here we got just a 50 cal and one guy with a Stinger missile. All right, that's our protection.
That's it.
And a wood boat, so I know somebody. I wasn't on the bridge, but somebody called it in. These guys were coming at us full blast with these high speed boats, these Iranians, and oh man, I tell you, it was hearts were pounding. Our pucker factor was high.
God, that
all of a sudden,
the crap out of me, man. Like we'd be coming in and out of port, and we're like, I would be topside as a line handling supervisor, and on a submarine, it's like you have one guy topside with an M4, and then a dude up in the sail with a crew served weapon, and that's it. Like you're banking on the little small boats around you, and then like in San Diego, you'd have a sailboat with like civilians waving at you like 30 feet away, and you're just like, how is this okay? Like if any one of these was trying to attack us, we'd be screwed.
You know the feeling then.
Oh my God, it's terrifying.
I'm going to tell you, our British friends, I'll thank them forever. HMS London was screening our area, and they came in. You could see them hauling butt, dude, full flank speed. Yeah. And when those gunboats saw her coming, they turned and ran.
Never mind. That's awesome. That always scared the crap out of me. Every time we were topside, and like I was on a ballistic missile submarine for my last tour, and they're a lot better about it. They have these huge blocking vessels. There's a Coast Guard security detachment. There's all this stuff. There's like a ton more protection for obvious reasons, but like, when I was on fast boats, going in and out of port was scary, man. Like going for just like a personnel transfer.
Yeah, I was on one of those recently. John Pine is a cobb of the Tennessee.
Oh yeah.
And he invited me down, and I'll tell you what, man, I've never been on one of those, and
Yeah.
I tell you, that's something else to see a boomer, you know?
Yeah, and like people, it's funny. People think those things are small. It's like, go walk around a Los Angeles class submarine and tell me that thing's small. Because my first boat was an '88, and then I was on a Seawolf, and then last one was a BN, and good grief, like that thing's huge in comparison to the other ones.
Oh yeah, that was an eye opener, and I would really thank John again for taking us down there and really showing us his ship, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I mean, everyone knows it, kind of, and that's kind of where I'm coming from. Is like I know what I've read about the bombing on the Cole, but like we'll start with like however much you want to share, like we talked about what actually happened and how it happened from your perspective, and then like I said before too, I definitely want to get into the leading, like how you dealt with it from the leadership position you were in as that stuff happened.
Yeah, actually, the leadership challenge was not only under crisis, but before, as other ships in our battle group, because we were then with the George Washington Battle Group, but we were going to be the lone ship, you know, because the money, they didn't have a lot of support ships behind her. It was just us and a supply oiler going across the Atlantic. But when I got to her at first, the CMC had been relieved for cause. Didn't know that.
Geez. So the culture.
So the culture was a challenge. Stuff, yeah. The chiefs had let the mess down, and that's no secret. They got their butts chewed because they let the command master chief, when they were in Puerto Rico, get in a car drunk from the mess, and nobody, took the time out to have his back, whether they liked him or not. You know.
Yeah.
So once they got done with the previous master chief and obviously relieved him, the mess was told to go in, and the Commodore ripped them a new one.
Yeah.
So I knew when I went in that there would have to be leadership guidelines, and one of the things was I told them I wasn't going to tolerate that, and no backstabbing. We had a mission to accomplish, and that if they didn't want to be on there, and I told them my rules. As their CMC, then they need to go call the detailer. And they didn't. I told them I didn't want E7s, obviously, and 8s working in the command. I wanted chief petty officers.
For sure. I've seen this weird thing, and I wonder if you agree because of what you're describing. Is I've had conversations with my buddies about it, because I've always found that in a mess, it's like there'll be me and a handful of other guys that are constantly driving certain cultural things. And that when people start to like relax, or people start to accept mediocrity in one form or another, like me and maybe a handful of other dudes are the ones flipping out about it. Like, no, that's not okay. But what I've seen is like, depending on who is in the CMC or SEL position, kind of they set the tone, they set the culture of the mess. And then what you'll see a lot of times is guys that could be lighting the world on fire with a guy like you. And then another guy comes in that his bar might be a little lower, or he might just be a little different and do things a little differently. They adjust to his tone and culture setting. You know what I mean? Where it's like guys that you would think wouldn't allow bad things like that to happen. They kind of like just adjust to their surroundings. They're just like, oh, this is what we're doing now. And then they start doing that. And it's kind of bizarre, because you look at these guys like they're these pipe hitter, type A personalities. And then when the culture and what we're doing changes, they kind of just adapt, and it's kind of bizarre. So I wonder if you saw kind of the same thing, where those guys, like, they adjusted to that guy, he got fired, they realized they had screwed up, and then you came in and set a new tone and a new culture, and they're just like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What I understood, at least listening to the chiefs, was they were working with a master chief with dictative leadership style.
Okay.
Which is not good. And driven his mess that way. Like I said, I wasn't witness to all of it. Right. But I went in there letting them know that one of my rules was I wanted them to be 51% of the vote, not me.
Yeah.
That's but if I had to be the voter and they couldn't make up their mind, then I'd do it. I wasn't afraid to do that. Right. But I'd rather see the mess work together and send a message to the captain and XO that this is what we need to do, or this is where we need to go. And one of the key things that I did with my captain, because he was new just like me, I only showed up a few months after him, was his relationship was so important. You know that as a chief to the mess.
Yeah.
And so we had some, obviously not just the training, because the crew, we had 45% almost of the crew turnover.
Yeah.
Before we left. So that's a challenge. We got the SCBAs, which is the, the self-contained breathing apparatus.
Yep.
We went from the old OBA system. So there's a lot of system changes, the deal. So we had that challenge. Plus you had the warriors stuff to do. And then you had, your division and other things to do to be mission ready. Yeah. Well, it's not easy and it gets complicated. So as we're working towards mission readiness, and I'm just an old doc by trade, things started getting a little technical and somewhat complicated in some things. So I said, you know what? I think I need to get the captain down here and each one of you chiefs in your technical areas and in your lingo need to tell the captain. So I went up and told Captain Kirk Lippold, sir, you need to take your armor off or put it on and bring your notebook and be ready for anything. Because in the mess, you're going to hear anything. And other chiefs had groomed him already. And he understood. So I took him down there and I let him loose, man. That's awesome. I'm going to tell you what, not only did we fix some problems and figure out how to expedite getting to that end point ready to go to the tip of the spear, but the captain had built a relationship with his chief petty officers and senior chief petty officers. And I made it clear to them that every little thing, I'm not that kind of mass chief. I don't know how the other guy was, but you don't need to bring all your personnel and other issues to me directly. I don't want it. Now, if it's going to go up to the command level, yes. Yeah. But if it, you need to keep it down at your level, division officer, whatever level, and that's it. I'm not going to be a micromanagement kind of guy here. Right. I don't work that way. And if you got technical issues that need to go to the XO captain, well, please do.
For sure.
Don't come to me. I got enough crap going on, without I don't need all that technical ninja stuff in my lap. And so that streamlined everything. Yeah. And, like you said, some mass chiefs operate different than others, but that's the way I operated. And my unintended consequences, we got a lot of problems fixed and we got our mission ready.
That's a huge thing too. I think that relationship builds a ton of trust between commander and chiefs. And it's just like, I've seen it work both ways where like I had a relationship where the Cobb brought the CO down and he wasn't willing to receive any criticism. Like I got in a screaming match with him at one point because you came down here because you wanted to hear feedback on what you were trying to do, and what you're trying to do is a bad idea. I'm going to tell you it's a bad idea. That's what you came in here for. The door's closed. Like the crew can't hear you. You wanted this unadulterated feedback. Here it is. And then everybody's looking at me like I got three heads when I do it. And it's just like, what? Like you came down here for that. That's what we're here to provide. And I'm not attacking you. I'm giving you the feedback you came here for. But he didn't have his armor on as you expressed it. Like his pride and ego got hurt. And it's like, you can't come down here that way, man. It's not going to work. If you come down here and you're defensive and you're not willing to receive the feedback from all these guys, because that we're trying to help, like we're trying to give you the information that you need to make the best decisions possible and tell us which way to go. And then that's what we're going to do. But like, there was this relationship where he just didn't understand that we were all here. Like, I work for you, sir. Like, I'm here to get behind you and push. But one of the ways that I'm going to do that is letting you know when something that you want to do is a bad plan, because I don't want you to then go forward with that and all the consequences that you're not seeing that I'm trying to explain to you end up biting you,
Yeah, and sometimes your Cobb may or may not be part of the problem. It just depends on how receptive that captain is to that Cobb or command master chief,
Right.
And how willing they are to put aside their personal, like you said, issues and do the right thing for the mission and the ship. Yeah. And there's an example of that too. What you were just talking about was, when I got the ship, they mandated the surface warfare qualification.
Yeah.
Because you guys, the sub guys, had led the way in trying to be mission ready by knowing your ship,
Yeah.
So we as a mess were trying to figure out how to do it right on Cole.
Right.
We don't want to hand it out like candy, but we wanted to make it challenging and attainable because, you have different IQs out there, bottom line.
Right.
So anyway, the wardroom got a hold of it, and of course you can only imagine. So this little pamphlet became almost a book, dude. a notebook. Yeah. And then the mess finally, hey, Mass Chief, we need help, Yeah. So I took it up there, the book and everything, and asked him to, and this is my first one-on-one with him, in not a good way. You know what I mean? I'm going to challenge him. And I was uncomfortable because it's my first time doing this stuff.
Right.
But bottom line, he said, what do you need? And I told him, sir, you and your wardroom have made this thing so complicated that it's not attainable, and it's too much. And he says, well, what do you want me to do? I said, I want you to let the chief petty officers do this. He says, well, I want us to do it too. We need some input. I said, well, sir, you have the wardroom. I've got the mess. This is, if you can see on here, enlisted surface.
Yeah.
I didn't get through that, dude. Yeah. Freaking papers are flying in the stateroom. You take this and just go handle it yourself, Master Chief. In a nicer way.
Yeah.
But that was my first run-in with Kirk Lippold, and
that's funny.
But you know what? When you get past that, finally, because you're like a kid, you're kind of scared of where this is going to go.
Yeah,
they've got a number 10 boot up your rear end.
Yeah.
But but we got it back. That's the main thing, and we were able to make it a program that was attainable, but yes, challenging.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, it's one of the things that I talk to people a lot about, that process and how it works on submarines, and it's just kind of like based on the different aptitudes and stuff. It's like we always had the focus on damage control. Like the entire time I've been doing it, it's just been like there's things that it's kind of understood that you need to know, and there's things that you need to have a basic working knowledge of, and that's it. And almost all of the in-depth knowledge revolves around DC. Like everybody's a damage controlman on a submarine. So it's just like, that's the big stuff. And then a lot of boats do practical stuff too, to make sure that people actually know how to do it. They're not just regurgitating something they read in a book, and then they go from there. But yeah, it's definitely, when I saw that, I was happy. Like when they mandated it, I was like, oh great, that's awesome. Because then, like, I remember learning in boot camp about like the Forrestal fire and everything else. I'm like, if they had known how all that stuff worked, they might've been able to fight the ship better. But yeah, I got excited about it, but then I got worried about it. And then I made a bunch of surface friends, like later in when I went to my first shore duty, and they talked about it, and I was like, oh, maybe this is different than I think it is. And seems like it was different ship to ship too. I'm not sure.
Well, I think I don't know how the sub community works on that, but
yeah,
I know surface wise, a lot of people will personalize it to their command as well.
Yeah, submarine wise, there's not much variance. Like there's a little bit where the command will have a command qualification and training instruction, but nowadays everything's run through a computer program and it's all standardized across the force. And so it's like you're all learning the same things. The bar is at least theoretically set in the same place. It all depends on the subject matter expert you're talking about for that checkout, but it's pretty similar. You're going to see a lot of standardization across the force nowadays.
Yeah, I'm still getting message traffic sometimes, or letters from friends that are in high places, and it looks like they're possibly going to change it back to being a voluntary program again.
Yeah, that's what it sounded like. I read an article saying something to that effect, but I haven't seen anything official, but I've been out of the loop for a couple months now just because of all the medical stuff. But
you've been in the loop longer than me though, brother.
Yeah.
I've been retired so long, but that's why I have them send me stuff just so, like during the season of pride or initiation time, whatever you want to call it. But I want to make sure that I'm up to snuff because I like to still participate, and I don't want to be that old fart that, you know what I mean, that's out there doing the wrong thing though,
Yeah, I'm glad that you're involved, because I find that and I've talked about it on the podcast before a while back during some of the chief season stuff. It's just like, I don't understand why retirees aren't leveraged more. And I'm sure there's probably certain areas that do it better. It's just in the areas that I've been in, it's not generally that robust, man. Like once in a while, you'll see one of the CMCs from the region that retired there will pop up. But a lot of times it's like it's just not taken advantage of, where I feel like there's a huge appetite for it. Cause I went and got one of my CMCs that retired to come talk to the crew of my next submarine when I was running they called it CPO 365 at the time, but just some leadership training. And I asked him to come speak to him. And man, I had 50 first classes in a room that were on the edge of their seat, just hanging on his every word. And then when it was done, they were all super thankful, shaking his hand and happy about it. And then, I mean, we walked down one flight of stairs, and I think he thanked me half a dozen times because he got to stand in front of a group of sailors and be that guy again and like be involved and contribute. And he was just super happy to be rubbing elbows with sailors again because he'd been retired for 5 years, you know, and he just got that like fix.
And there's things to learn from us old guys because there is some things in the Chiefs community that is hard, fast, stays the same. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain things surrounding it that change, but the core leadership and other things that you don't read in the book that you learn from experience from that Master Chief and how he got there, that makes all the difference in a sailor's life to be a better chief.
Yeah. And I just having those conversations too, like you find yourself sitting there. It's like living history, man. It's like you're sitting there and you're getting this stuff like downloaded into you. And that was one of the things, like when I made chief in 9.5 years. I was barely ready. And I took the first year or more getting punched in the face, figuring it out before I really felt like I was a chief. And the CMC that I had been around for almost 30 years. And during the season, I remember he had us do book reports, right? A lot of people do book reports. So we all read a book. And of course, we were so overwhelmed with everything else that was going. We were at sea, operational on a special projects platform. Like I had 10 million things to do on top of the Chief season stuff and stand watch and everything else. And so you're like overwhelmed. Of course you are. You're select. So our book reports were half out because of course they were. And so like we went in there and did our book reports and got 30 seconds into them before we got shut down. And instead of destroying us, he sat there and gave effectively a book report, but he did it in a way where it was like he was there. Like he's doing like the book report there were 6 of us and every one of us had a different book. And he had clearly read, highlighted, and probably wrote in the margins of every single one of these books. And we were just like dumbfounded and just sitting there listening to him go through it. And then relaying like his own leadership experiences and just that kind of stuff. I get excited about it because I'm passionate about this stuff, but like I've never seen more effective leadership development training ever. Like somebody like you, somebody like him, somebody that's been around for a really long time, did all the things, has all the stories, has all that experience, sitting down and sharing that. I've never seen anything like it. I sat down with my wife's grandfather before he passed, and he was a Korean War veteran. And for whatever reason, like she told me, she's like, I've never seen him talk to anybody like that. And it was just, I don't know if it's because I'm in the military or what, but he started telling me all about his experiences in Korea. And I was just like riveted. I was just sitting there and I was asking him these questions. And yeah, man, I feel like it's an untapped resource that it's like, I know people know it's there. I know it's in the MCPON's guidance, and occasionally I think it gets leveraged, but there's so much there that I feel like isn't drawn on enough. And that's something that I hope to do more on this podcast, is talk to people like you and get some of that stuff recorded and shared in a way that it'll be received by all these sailors that got smartphones welded to their hands.
Yeah. Last year I got to do stepping in the mast at Great Lakes.
That's cool.
With all the chiefs. Of course, the mess is quite big up there at RTC, right, as well as, we had fleets and forces and MCPON there, but you're right. And then other retirees there, but what a platform. And you're right. When local regions or even just local command areas can put stuff like that together, it makes a whole lot of difference.
Yeah. There's so much there.
And and the Korean War vet, I think unattendedly you helped him too, by healing and telling his stories.
Yeah.
Sharing his experience.
It was pretty shocking. We were just at a restaurant having some food, and I was and she just told me recently, because I had brought it up, that kind of same type of conversation where I wanted to talk to more people like that, like retirees and veterans. And she said, yeah, I've never heard my grandfather tell anybody that much information, that much detail. He just never talked about it. And then here we are at a Mexican restaurant, and he's just telling you all about all these crazy experiences he had in the Army when he was in Korea. And I was just like, holy crap. He's a truck driver, but everybody's an infantryman. So he had some wild stories, and yeah, I hope it did. He was an awesome guy. I wish I had gotten to talk to him more before he passed, but
my dad may have been over there with him because he was Korean War and Vietnam vet.
Oh, really?
And
Wow.
Like you said, I'm glad he told me, because he's not here anymore either. And to hear it from your own dad and sacrifices he made, it took a while for him to open up. Years later in his life.
Yeah, I really enjoy that kind of stuff, and I'm hoping to do more of it. So let's shift
get back
over
on
to
track.
Yeah, I told you we'd get off on a tangent. So experiences of day of, you know what I mean? Like how like what were you doing? Where were you? And how did it all go down? And then we'll get into the leadership dynamics of it.
Yeah, we successfully transited the Atlantic, hit quite a few Liberty ports in the Mediterranean. We dealt with the first GQ in the Adriatic. They were looking for a guy named Milosevic who had war crimes. And we were being spied on by an unmarked white ship. It had all these antennas. Yeah. We intercepted her, went to GQ. That was a first taste for the crew to get the real general quarters.
Wow.
And we made contact with her, and the captain warned him. He said, I was going to send a 5-inch round over your bow here in a minute if you don't identify yourself. Yeah. So they put up a British flag, and then the Marines took over and VBSS, vertical board search and seizure of the ship.
Yeah.
We went on our way to finally inchop to the Fifth Fleet and towards Yemen.
Yeah.
Successfully transited the Suez Canal, and then 12 October 2000, we're anchored outside of the port of Aden Harbor, directed to take on about 200,000 gallons of fuel.
Yeah. And how normal is that evolution? I was reading a little bit about it, that it was routine, and I'm like, that doesn't sound routine to me, but I wasn't around back then, so.
No, it was political.
Okay.
The Clinton administration was trying to, better the relationship with the Yemeni government, because it was Djibouti was right across the Yemeni Sea there, and so it was for us, I guess, a key strategic place.
Yeah.
Plus they were an oil producing country. But yeah, when we got ready to pull in there, man, I tell you, it was eerie. You always get this 6th or 7th sense, whatever, gut feeling that something ain't right. We had these half sunk ship on our starboard side, these abandoned Iraqi tankers from Desert Storm and Shield on our port side.
Wow.
It just didn't feel right. We were going to refuel in the middle of the harbor. Thank God it wasn't pier side in Aden. It could have been a lot worse there alone. The pilot was insistent on parking us with bow pointed in towards land, and Captain Lippold, he was insistent that we were going to turn her around and have her in the middle of the harbor parked so their bows pointed out towards sea, towards that exit, of the harbor.
Right. So you can just get out of there.
So if something happened, he was thinking ahead as a captain would.
Yeah.
And so we did. We wrapped up, and it was found out that there was multiple sails, like with Al Qaeda. That's what they do. They don't communicate with each other, but they do have certain tasks to do that are part of the mission, their mission. Yeah. And we believe that was one of them, that the pilot intended for us to park that way. So if we were crippled or anything, that it'd be more difficult to get her out of there.
Yep.
So anyway, we're wrapped up starboard side too, hooking up fuel. I'm up top side. They're setting up the quarterdeck. We're in at Force Protection Bravo. We have only one watch armed up topside with a 9mm, and that's Fireman Mooney. Started noticing the small boats coming in. There was different kind of boats because it's a third world country.
Yeah.
Coming alongside to take on garbage. And that's how the Al Qaeda boat, small boat, the pleasure boat with the IED in it, was able to get close to us and kind of blend in with them.
Yeah.
But I went down below to my office, a real small office next to the mess decks, where they were cooking up some chow, and had heard, you hear the crew there too, and the chow line saying, "Hey, we're running ahead on fuel. We're going to get out an hour earlier," which was great. Nice. We wanted to get out of that crap hole.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It was bad there. Anyway, I realized I had a meeting. It's about 5 minutes before the actual attack. So I missed being killed by 5 minutes.
Wow.
And never leaves my mind. I always think of that.
Yeah. I was going to ask that question. I thought you were in your office, because I know from buddies that were on destroyers that you're right next to the decks.
Yeah, right next to what got hit, where ground zero is. But I did pass that area within minutes, where ground zero was, back aft to the training room. which is under the flight deck aft. And we were having a meeting, MWR meeting about getting TVs. That didn't take long. Didn't even take a minute to say yeah. And then right after that, you heard the deafening sound of the blast, and you felt an 8,500-ton ship lift up under your feet, and could see the bulkheads ripple. Because I'm kind of half in and out of the frame of the door when it happened. We all look at each other in shock. It's just dead silence. It was eerie silence. Yeah. And the XO was with us, got on the IVX phone, and it was dead. So he says, pass by word of mouth, go to general quarters. So now all this technology is gone.
Yeah.
We're manning fire stations or, repair parties by word of mouth. Damage controls having to be passed by word of mouth. Casualty issues are being passed by word of mouth. And I was luckily back aft by the aft battle dress station, which I agreed to man since my old corpsman skill sets were still could be put to good use there.
Yeah.
The main battle dress station, along with the mess decks and the galley, were destroyed or unattainable or just not usable, period. Yeah. Doc Mosier, luckily, was forward, sleeping, taking a nap after he ate lunch, because if he was in the mess, he might have been injured bad, because half the mess was in there, in the chief's mess. Yeah. I didn't realize it at this point yet, but when I went to the battle dress station, there was about 20 casualties there, fractured jaws, some other fractures, shrapnel to the face, people blinded by the blast temporarily. So we set up a triage station at the laundry room. It was right proximal to the battle dress station. Okay. And Baby Doc showed up with a striker corpsman, and we started triaging. They started treating. Got word that there was more serious injured towards the mess decks, obviously.
Yeah.
And galley. So I told Baby Doc to take over. She's assistant and sort of crew members with treating. And they did a hell of a job. Time in something like that is just not measurable. I can't explain it. It's just different. But it was incredible with all the training we did, not only with damage control, but with medical training. It made the difference in saving lives and shipmates. The dressings that were put on by other coal sailors was just wonderful what they did. Whether it was a fractured jaw or broken limb, whatever, they did a hell of a job in treating their fellow shipmates. And as I was making my way up topside, there's one of my chiefs, Mark Darwin. He's injured. He had fractured, I had to have him rule out, but it looked like he had fractured collarbone, maybe ribs, couldn't hardly breathe. And he was asking me about his guys in the ship, and I just had to tell him to be quiet so I could assess them and have them taken out. And as I'm treating them, I look up and there's guys coming by us, because we're kind of midships, cross deck, if you can imagine that passageway between the port and starboard side. And I can see guys going by, sailors going by with stretchers, and some of them had chiefs. And it just hit me that I realized, oh my gosh, that, the mess probably got hit.
Yeah. So
once I was done with Mark, I was told there was a really seriously injured sailor in the log room, which has a regular door on it. And there was a really seriously injured 19-year-old sailor there. We'd just done a career development board on him. That's the first thing that crossed my mind. And he was in terrible shape. Yeah. And anyway, we had him put on a door and taken out because we either couldn't access or we didn't have enough stoke stretchers. So we took him back aft and on the flight deck, and there's more casualties out on the flight deck being treated. First thing I did was scream airway, breathing, circulation. Let me know if they're serious. That's all you can do, is just triage and let the coal sailors that weren't involved with damage control or anything else stand by their shipmate and just monitor them, the ones especially that were in bad shape. But this young man, he, like I said, he was in horrific condition, and I knew he was probably expectant. But I tried to do CPR on him, which wasn't successful. I knew he was dying, and one of the other chiefs came up to help me out, and then he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, "James, you need to look around, man. They need you."
Yeah.
Because I was the only one there back aft on the flight deck, and so I had a couple of coal sailors take him over to the helo tower, where they could, be by his side until the end.
Yeah.
And I did say a prayer over him. I did serve with the Marines, and when you didn't have religious petty officers, Doc was it,
Yeah.
And so I said a prayer. I didn't know this young man's religion, but I knew it was the right thing to do, pray for his soul.
Yeah.
And that he not suffer anymore. And the crew, they said, were watching, and I had tears in my eyes. I mean, it was tough to hold yourself, but you knew you had to hold yourself together.
Yeah.
And then so I went over and started triaging other patients, coal shipmates. And one of the sailors had internal injuries pretty bad. He was my first guy to get out of there, and the word got to me that Doc Mosier was at the missile decks with the morphine and re-triaging, which was wonderful. I knew Doc was alive and treating patients.
Yeah, yeah.
So I had him sent up first. He actually survives, living today, but they lost him a couple times in the Nightingale flight.
Oh, my God.
He had ruptured internal organs, fractured limbs, and that young man fought. And like I said, is living today.
That's awesome.
Fireman Jeremy Stewart lives up in Virginia. Yeah. Then there was a guy named Petty Officer Gokul. He had flesh coming out of the soles of his boots. They were going to take him off. I said, no, just reinforce his boots with dressings and let's get him taken up. So he was second. And then third was a guy I had talked earlier on the bridge wing before we pulled in. And we called him Boss Hog Saunders, Petty Officer Saunders, OS2, big guy from Danville, Virginia.
Yeah.
And this is a big guy that could tolerate some pain. His legs were in pretty bad shape. The corpsman striker, his name was Sanchez. He's now a chief IDC out west, out there in San Diego. But he said, should I take him off and reinforce him? There's still blood. I said, no, leave him on. Just reinforce the dressings. Let's get him up next. And he was going to be the challenge because getting the patients up from the flight deck up to the missile deck, that ladder was pretty steep.
Okay.
But it was amazing when your adrenaline's running.
Yeah.
It's amazing what sailors can do.
Yep.
So, and that's what we did. And we monitored and got 39 plus patients off an hour and a half with the help. Boats was made, and some of the crew had to manhandle the gangplank. And those are heavy. Yeah. Those are not light. And jerry rig it so that we could get them down that. And we had to trust the locals to take our coal sailors over to the local hospital, which was not the best. It's a third world hospital, and they're outside. They're rioting. And typically the Yemeni carry around swords and knives and weapons, guns.
Yeah, I didn't know you guys even went to a local hospital.
Yeah.
Like in reading, it sounded like they all went to, it was like Landstuhl and I think French hospital or something. Yeah.
Djibouti. In Djibouti.
Djibouti,
yep.
Okay, yeah.
Well, no, that didn't happen. A lot of them had to go.
Wow.
The serious ones over to that hospital. They had glass bottle IVs. I mean, it was just,
yeah.
But luckily there was American missionaries there, doctors, and they responded and helped out as well.
That's awesome.
Reports came back that jewelry was stolen. And that stuff happens. And then all I wanted to make sure is they got it out of their life. And I tell you, leadership in crisis. Here's another example. Is people thinking out of the box. We were following the lead of firemen and E3s and 4s that were technical experts, and chiefs and senior petty officers would do what they say because they knew what the hell they were doing. And that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. That's a huge thing.
It's big, and that helped to save the ship, as well as another example was XO. He was the one that had them jerry rig a tent out back, put patients under that to keep them cool because that part of the world it's hot as hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he sent over a security force with the patients to also be walking blood banks. I mean, XO thought of this, man.
That's crazy.
That
wouldn't. I mean, maybe the tent, but like sending those guys over, I wouldn't. Get them to the hospital. Like I don't know that's amazing.
But the XO was thinking everybody was doing their part and thinking on their toes and out of the box.
That's awesome.
And those were leadership decisions made on the spot, no second questions, do it,
Yeah.
So it saved lives, big time. And then the other thing you were mentioning about them getting on that Nightingale, the Nightingale came in and they were targeting it, the Yemeni.
Yeah.
Their air support, their anti-aircraft missiles were targeted. And so they were getting alerts on their bird, had to turn around and come back and the embassy's like, what the hell,
That's what I was going to ask too, is I read just quickly, like the aftermath part of like where people were trying to get in and secure the Cole and help you guys out. And it was just like, yeah, they were like hostile, like towards everything.
Yeah.
And it was
it's
just
archaic.
Like, holy crap. Like, how did
when the
people
Army
get in there?
Yeah. The Army Air Force were scary at first, the first few days. The MiGs, the few MiGs they had, they were old MiGs, but still they could do some damage.
Yeah.
They were strafing us, dude.
Really?
They were strafing our ship. We're like, what the hell? We're going to get attacked again. So, we just got blown up. We got this 40 by 60 foot hole in the side, and you don't know if there's going to be a second attack to finish us off. Al Qaeda wanted a trophy, dude.
Yeah.
And then the Army comes in, sets up a perimeter, and their weapons are pointed at us.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah,
so we had to get word out. What the heck? And finally they turned, obviously their army into a defensive, not an offensive posture,
Yeah. That's crazy.
And then,
because that would scare me as in your or any leader's position for all those sailors going to the hospital and anybody leaving the ship at all. Like, just like, okay, well, what's happening to my guys at the hospital right now if they're pointing guns at me right here? Like,
yeah,
that's insane.
Yeah, exactly. But, I think also by the grace of God, everything went as smooth as it could. But the challenges afterward, after we got everybody off and started trying to stabilize the ship, which that was incredible for the first 3 or 4 days. We're listing 15 degrees. The main machinery room's flooded out, non-accessible. The supply rooms are flooded out. We have no comms. All the missiles are gone. They're dead, because they've been moved around. 5-inch guns down. So, all we had was bullets and grenades, dude. That's it. And I think we could have got that 5-inch gun if we really needed to, because people were ready to, I think that was the worst feeling, was not being able to retaliate to an enemy like that. Because if we're Americans, man, we want to kick ass. I'm serious. Where the hell are they? We want to take them out, dude. But we knew we had to keep our calm, and that was part of the leadership, was making people do it. Because one of my chiefs, man, he ripped down, when you pull a port, you put up the local flag. He ripped down the Yemeni flag, was stomping on it, cursing it. But, I don't blame him. He just saw dead shipmates and put them in body bags, I had to help put 5 of my shipmates in body bags. That was not anything I would want anybody to ever go through. And that sticks with me forever. It'll be forever in my mind, putting those sailors in body bags. And we had, it took 12 days to get all the deceased out from inside the ship, because they were either part of it and in places that were just not accessible without divers.
Yeah.
And that was a leadership challenge.
Yeah.
Crew had to sleep out on the flight deck. You saw the pictures, because there's no ventilation. We have one main generator working. The other 2 are gone. All 4 main engines are down.
Yeah.
Port shaft is bent. That's how strong this blast was, dude.
Yeah.
It rippled the flight deck. It bent the yard arms up on the main staff. That's incredible.
Yeah, hearing you describe it and reading about it are so different, because like when you describe it, I'm like, how the hell did they repair this thing? You know what I mean? Like the damage that you're describing, and then just like seeing the effect of the blast when it happened, I'm like, I can't fathom how they like got that thing and repaired it. Like, it's just, that's insane.
It took 2 years and about over $300 million, but you could see why. And there was a point that they were going to decommission her.
Yeah.
But Kirk, the captain, I credit him, and the admirals that were in there with the politicians, said, what kind of message basically are we going to send Al Qaeda and our enemy?
Yeah, I was just about to say that. I'm really glad they didn't do that.
And here we are today, in your face. She's been on 6 or 7, at least I know of, deployments, and a couple of those right through the Gulf of Aden.
Yeah, I was out there last year. The CS1 on her that made chief was one of my A school instructors, and I went out there for her season. Her chief also was one of my A school instructors, but had already made chief, so I flew out there and surprised her for the chief season. But yeah, like I got to hang out with the whole Cole's Chiefs mess. I got one of their sweet coyote brown hats with the Chiefs anchors on the back. So
cool. That's cool.
And it was just cool to like be around those guys and just understand that that's still a thing, that the USS Cole is still around, and that story and the importance of it, and the just like memorializing what the sailors that gave their lives in that incident. It's like that's a living memorial to them all the time, that ship is still sailing and fighting and doing what it does. And it's like the perfect memorial because it's still fighting. You know what I mean? Like no matter what happens, it's amazing. And I'm really glad that they ended up doing that.
But the leadership challenges those first few nights too, where, we had to worry about heat stress. People were down below with battle lanterns, monitoring the bulkheads for collapsing or flooding, increasing. Yeah. And so, you've got fuel oil spilled inside, not just outside the ship from ruptured tanks. We're lucky she didn't become a fireball. And then some of the sailors didn't want to go in the skin of the ship. And I didn't blame them because they know that their shipmates were still in there deceased.
Yeah. And
so we didn't force that on them. We just had them do other things outside to help out.
Yeah.
Now there was some that sat around, were depressed, moping, giving up. And so that's when you put your foot up their ass.
Yeah.
And you give them a choice. Either you get in here and you get to be part of this, or you're going to send you off the ship. And that statement alone was enough to get them motivated, because they did not want to look like they were cowardice or gave up or anything like that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't many. It was just a few. But, in our position as chiefs, that can become infectious.
Yeah.
And, you don't want that to happen. So you got to tell people to take 20 milligrams to suck it up and do the right thing by the ship and the command,
Yeah.
It's what you do. Yeah. It was hard, but, and I had publicly chewed some of them out in front of everybody, but I knew they needed a little motivation.
Yeah.
And that's what it took. Same with other leaders on the ship. And, and going through that, it took, like I said, 12 days to get our shipmates out of there. We had a side boys post for that department where the sailor was from. The captain was the only one when they brought him up topside to identify him. Nobody else. He didn't want none of the crew to see our shipmates in the condition they were in before they put them in the body bag. And then they draped the body bag with obviously American flag, and we pipe our shipmate ashore for the last time on their final journey home to their family. And it was hard. And then we did our own ceremony after that last shipmate was taken off, and it was back on the fantail, and we had that soiled flag that there's pictures of back there was soiled from the blast, from the water going over the ship, the displaced water. Yeah. And it actually put some of the fire out, because there was reports there was a fireball when the explosion happened. What we did was we were going to take down that evening, dusk, the old flag and put a new one up. So we took it down respectfully, and then when we put the new one up, we shone 18 battle lanterns on her for each soul lost. I'm sorry, 17. Blame my last. 17. And the reason I'm thinking 18, because the last light was the halogen light that's shown on that flag when it was up to the top of the pole to show them son of a bitch who crossed the way that we were not defeated.
Yeah.
And that we were driven to get her out of there. And it was motivating.
Yeah.
Because the first few days too, there was psych warfare. They were over there partying. They had speakers out, shooting guns, jumping up and down. You could see them with the big eyes. And I know they were trying to demotivate and take the wind out of our sails. And it just made us more pissed off than anything, man.
Yeah. I was
and that's why I said,
like, I'm surprised they didn't get shot at it if they're shooting guns and stuff, because that's all. Everybody's already on edge, and they want to retaliate against whatever happened. And
absolutely, brother. But we had to make sure everybody contained themselves.
Yeah.
The other thing sticking out of the box leadership wise is I got with Doc was there was also spoiled food in the skin of the ship, and so the flies started getting really bad, and they carry disease. Yeah. So, we had to I told Doc we need to get preventive medicine in there. And then we found out it's a malaria endemic area, but luckily we were out on the harbor. And so I don't think we really had to worry about mosquitoes getting to us, but still, those are the things that you had to think of as a leader outside the box that were also leadership challenges that could decimate your crew.
Yeah.
The heads didn't work. You couldn't have them go down below and use the show, you know?
Oh, wow. Yeah,
and
I wouldn't even have thought of that either.
Yeah, and that could be dysentery, history right there.
Yeah.
Again, decimating the crew. But all we had was just one toilet, or you even want to call it that.
Yeah.
It was more like a shed box over a hole on that little pier there that we were on, that you pooped out, basically your, whatever did your business into the water directly.
Wow.
Because it's a third world country.
Yeah.
But so those were the kind of things that you had to think of as a leader outside the box. And there was damage control challenges as well. I mean, we lost our generator, and it was important for comms because we were hooking our comms up to it. Once we got support, got the Marines in there, the Fast Company from Yorktown, and we got the SEALs in there to set up a perimeter. But we needed that power. And when the generator went down, it was one of the young firemen, enginemen, that actually thought about taking one of the new high-pressure diesel compressors that we got with that SCBA system and jerry-rigging the flask for that turbine engine to turn it. And it worked.
Oh, wow.
And you don't read that in a book.
Yeah.
I mean, this is stuff. And like you said, those master chiefs in the chiefs mess, when you were going through the season, sharing that experience. Well, this kind of stuff too is so important, and stuff you don't read in a book, but you learn in a classroom from others that are warfare qualled or have that experience, and what stories to share. And another motivator was one of the HTs or somebody had jerry-rigged the decom station. We had blood on us and all kinds of soot and stuff. And so 4 or 5 days out, I see a line, everybody standing there with their ditty bags,
taking showers,
smiling, using the decon locker. But what if, but it motivated the crew, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I had a buddy of mine that was CMC on the Haas. And first thing he says, James, man, what do you need? They came aboard on the small boat. And being with the Marine Corps, the first thing I thought of, brother, was chili mac. I mean, when you're in the field with the Marines, hot chow and chili mac, and especially, it'll do the number. And sure enough, man, that evening,
just pans of chili mac.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you what, buddy, they were recharged and ready to go for round two.
Yeah. That's crazy.
But those are the things that made all the little things that made all the difference, in a situation like that.
Wow. Yeah. And I was I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like I was thinking about it, like I couldn't even imagine being in that situation. Like I've been in a handful of small submarine fires, and it's like, it's enough to get your adrenaline going and for you to think about the worst case scenario, but then the crew reacts exactly how they're supposed to, and it gets taken care of, and it's not a big deal. But just to be in that situation, I was thinking to myself, like, I can't even imagine how complicated and stressful and just like all the things that would be going on, and like how hard it would be to deal with it. But it also kind of sounds like it was simple but not easy. Like it was like the crew understood what was going on and they just reacted accordingly. And a lot of the normal leadership challenges that you have almost faded to the background because they just understood that there was only one priority, and it was fighting the ship and taking care of everybody that needed taken care of. And so it was almost like it simplified a lot of things because everybody was immediately in lockstep heading in the same direction with you talked about, you had to kick a few people in the butt to get them motivated, but it was a little simpler, like to where there wasn't so many complex leadership issues. It was more just the management of fighting the ship, like just making sure everybody's doing all the things. And then never underestimate the ingenuity of SME force, man, because they're going to come up with showers and generator fixes and stuff. So it sounds like everybody was just already motivated and headed in the right direction on their own. And it's like, nobody told them to do that. Well, like, they just did it. And it's like, it almost sounds like it got simplified a little bit.
Yeah. And then, like you said, your DGUTS don't give up the ship, and they knew it. We did not want Al-Qaeda to have their trophy and have us be a video somewhere to recruit others. That's big. And we know the end goal was to get what our ship was America. It represented our country. It was our country. And by God, we were going to get her the hell out of there, whatever it took, man and woman. And, I'm really proud of every one of them, what they did. When we finally got to that goal of getting her out, and by the way, they did get a main engine working. They could have turned a prop, dude. They could have. We wouldn't have been going like 5-10 knots, but still, the fact that they could do that says a lot as well.
That's incredible.
But we had the ocean going tug come down from Bahrain, started to pull us out, and as we're making our way out, the eye seaman put the speakers out and was playing patriotic music, and we're all manning the rails, okay? And the Yemeni patrol guys, they had like a Yemeni patrol boats there. They were actually standing there rendering us honors. Wow. So we did. But when we got past them, and I'm up there on the bridge wing with the XO, one of our crazy eye seamen, IC2, plays American Badass by Kid Rock. We have got news people on there, dude. XO, you know how XOs are. XO's friggin' losing it, running down the ladder wells. Cut it off. You know, it's too late. It's too late, dude.
That's hilarious.
Well, the unintended consequence of that was Kid Rock found out and heard it and read it. And he put a concert on for the crew in Norfolk.
Oh, that's so cool.
And gave all the money to the families that lost their loved ones.
That's amazing. That sounds.
Of course, we know how he is anyway. He's got a big heart. People know that, and he really loves our military. But and then, so that's an inside story there for you.
I've never heard that before. That's awesome.
And he actually, when he came to Hampton Roads, we had to set up a temporary quarters in Norfolk while the ship was being repaired and assessed. And he came up there and visited with us. So we all got a picture opportunity. We ate chow in the chow hall with him. Yeah. And that was so good for the crew. You know, that was really good for the crew.
That's so cool. That's hilarious. Shout out to the eye seaman that played that over the Winter Sea. That's amazing. That sounds like something a submariner would do. That's why I'm dying about it, because it's like there's some funny stories out there about some shenanigans that happen in the submarine force. And
that was Petty Officer Croft. That's the name.
Well, good on you, Petty Officer Croft. I dig it. That's hilarious. Yeah, I guess what were the leadership challenges that followed? Like, so you're talking about we loaded the ship up, put her on the transport vessel to bring her home and get her repaired. What were the leadership challenges that followed that? Because I don't know. I guess I don't know exactly when you detached and went to Sigonella. So like, what followed as far as once all the adrenaline wears off and we're not in that high stress environment?
Yeah, this whole thing was called Operation Determined Response. We were 1,000 nautical miles from the nearest Navy ship. I know we could have got other support from other services if we really were in a bind.
Right.
But that just says how far away we were sea-wise from any Navy ships, our own. And our Canadian friends were the first ones to come in there and respond and help us, to give them credit, HMS Marlborough. But, the plan was to put her on that heavy lift ship and send her home around the Horn of Africa. And the reason why the threat con was still high, that Al-Qaeda still wanted to finish the job and attack the ship.
Right.
And so the ship was well protected. We had high security in the area while she was being loaded. We offloaded onto LCUs and went on the USS Tarawa with a MARG, where she would go ahead and transport us north off the coast of Oman, where we were flown. It was like freaking to me, it was like, what's that Vietnam movie where the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, you know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the name.
But anyway, I felt like that. I mean, we weren't attacking or nothing, but we had all these CH-46s once we made it up far enough north and loaded on these helos, and they took us to an Air Force base from Desert Storm and Shield, where our bird was waiting. And so we waited there, we headed out, and we actually flew the opposite direction of where we were going, because that's how much of a threat they still, the intel detected. Yeah. And when they felt we were safe, then we started flying towards Rhine Mine, and landed there to refuel overnight, and then headed home. But there was a lot of story sharing then, and experience, I should say, more so, not stories, experience sharing, because we really had to wrap ourselves around what we just went through. And everybody deals with it different, young and old. Yeah. You know, young people especially had a hard time because, they would join the Navy to get educated, and those kind of things. And they didn't think that they'd ever be seeing something real like this. And they did.
Yeah.
And seeing people die, their best friends, shipmates. So, yeah. And so we did that when we were in Rhine-Main. Some of them snuck over to the club and got beer and got a little tipsy, but they deserved it. They earned it.
Yeah.
I didn't because I was still decompressing myself, and I'm the kind of person that needs some alone time.
Yeah.
But we got home. It was obviously the big reception with MCPON and SecNav and CNO and all there.
Yeah.
And down. Families, grabbed up their member, just like ran home because they had them. They're safe.
Yeah. Yep.
A lot of hugging and loving.
Yeah.
But the ones that got medevac, some of them, they didn't get that. They didn't get to stay with the crew as one and talk about everything that happened and kind of decompress from it. And one of them was one of the chiefs that slept over me. He was gunner's mate chief, and he lived in Florida, and that's where he was. And I'm sorry, he got medevac through Florida. But anyway, I think he lived up in Virginia.
Yeah.
And anyway, bottom line is he got separated, so he's going through a divorce as well as dealing with that and not talking to anybody. He was injured, and he was staying with a friend. Well, bottom line is he stole his buddy's gun and went out to a hunting shack out there in Chesapeake and took himself out. And I found out because I, after the fact, took orders when it was time for me to leave because we were at that headquarters in Norfolk, separate of the ship. And I felt it was time to go at April that next year and let someone else take over. This guy needed to decompress from it all.
Yeah.
And so I took orders to SIG. And it was unique for me because MCPON Hurt called me. Okay. And he said, what do you want to do? I said, MCPON, I want to get out of the 95-80 program temporarily, not permanently. I want to go back to the corpsman community so I can go somewhere where I can decompress as a leader, but yet helps right there.
Yeah.
Because I got to be good. I got to be good for the Navy. I got to be good for that sailor, and that's how you think. You're not weak. You just got to think that way. That PTSD is something you don't mess around with.
Yeah.
So I went to SIG as a senior enlisted for the command, as a command master chief. All right. But not in a 95-80 capacity, again, as a HMCM.
Okay.
And that's unique to do that. That doesn't happen, dude. I don't know how many times that's even ever happened in our master chief community, especially command master chief community. So that's when I got word, though, as I'm getting back to, I was sitting in the office and the chaplain's there, and I knew, oh God, something happened. You knew right away something was wrong with the crew, and that's when he told me about Mark, and that he committed suicide. And it was hard. It was hard.
Yeah.
And then, of course, while I was over there in SIG, 9/11 happens.
Oh, wow.
They're telling Master Chief, cut the damn TV on. And it's like, it wouldn't go away, man.
Timeline-wise, that didn't even...
Yeah,
wasn't
even a year.
Yeah.
And so you felt like we were the prelude to 9/11, and we still do. We felt that our inability to attack and get some revenge, whatever, how you want to put it, and show them we weren't taking any crap, didn't happen. I really feel, and this is personal, James, but I feel it emboldened our enemy.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew they weren't going to give up.
The perceived success on a world stage of the Cole being attacked had to have, of course it did. You know what I mean? Like,
it's like a jumping point.
Even though they didn't accomplish probably what their goal was of taking out the ship entirely, like, it was still, I'm sure, perceived as a huge victory, and I'm sure they got a lot of motivation out of that or whatever. But and I didn't even, just thinking about, I don't think about it in the same way because I didn't live it. So I wasn't even thinking about that 5 minutes after you're feel like you're probably getting to a place that you can start to decompress and heal, it's then 9/11 happens and it's just Jesus.
Here we go again.
Here we go again. Yeah.
And another side story, Kirk Lipple, the captain, and a couple of crew members were actually working in the Pentagon when it was hit.
Oh, when it got hit. Good grief.
Now, Kirk, he was actually that day on 9/11, wasn't at the Pentagon. He was at CIA headquarters.
Okay.
Get this. He was up there talking to him about Cole and I guess some sensitive issue concerning it, as well as repercussions. But Kirk told him, my captain, and I truly believe if he was able to stay in, and he would have been an admiral, no doubt. But he told him, he said it's going to take a sentinel event for us to get it.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, he leaves, and as he's leaving, this CIA officer calls him back and says, Kirk, remember what you just said? And he shows him the TV, and there's a Pentagon getting hit by one of the birds. So he had to drive. He drove back over there.
Yeah.
And as he's driving over there, and I got this firsthand from Kirk, he saw him bringing the kids out of the nursery. So he pulls over to get out to help them.
Yeah.
And then these 4 or 5 black SUVs pull up, and they screech to a halt. One of them rolls down the window because we had FBI agents on Cole investigating that bombing.
Yeah.
And what the hell are you doing out here, Kirk? Kirk, it was one of the agents on our case. Wow. I mean, this is how small of a world this is, dude.
Wow.
I mean, and the concern of terrorism and attacks and all that.
Yeah.
It's like a magnet. It's like you can't get away from it anymore.
That's
once you've been in it, you know?
Oh my God. That's nuts.
It is.
Yeah. Good.
But,
wow.
We've got relationships with the FBI, with others, NCIS, because of the years of going down there, watching this case get put together and the challenges that go with it.
Yeah. Good.
When I first saw that bad guy, Al Nashiri, he came into that damn courtroom, man, like he was a friggin' WWE rock star. Bouncing, hands in the air. I mean, he had that kind of attitude.
That's crazy.
Oh, you just wanted to, we're behind a bulletproof glass in the gallery, of course.
Yeah. Looking
out at the courtroom and looking directly at the judge. But, man, you just wanted to jump through that glass. All of us did, and just, you can only imagine what we wanted to do, man.
That's what we wanted to have to. And who do you travel down there with for the trials and stuff? Because I got to imagine that it's just like
it's a lottery.
Okay.
9/11's worse because there's 3,000 family members, and that's probably double or more than that of other family members too.
Right.
But still, for us, we send down 10, about 5 members with a spouse or significant other.
It's gotta be tough.
Family member. It is. And a lot of crew hasn't went because of that.
Yeah. I was going to,
it just opens up old wounds. And some of us that have been, there's a few of us that really have been pretty religious about going down there. And it's just, we want the judge to see us, as well as Gold Star families.
Yeah.
We want that judge to see us and know we're not letting this go, that we want to see it to the end.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
Even though can you believe it? We're 20 years here this October
that
into the bombing.
My mind that's not all adjudicated already. Trials are still happening 20 years
15
later.
Or whatever years, into trial and all the due process that's been going on with this case.
Yeah, that's crazy. Wow, man, I'm having a hard time even wrapping my mind around all this. How would you say, this is something that I've talked to a few guys about, just giant traumatic life-changing events that they've had during their careers. And it's kind of like, I always like to ask how your leadership, perspective or maybe some of your principles have changed since going through that event. Because a lot of us, I think you get it from a book, or you get it from the chief season, or you just get it from your experiences that are the normal, day-to-day leadership type experiences. And you kind of build your methods and your style around that. But how do you think you changed as a leader after having gone through this crisis?
I've learned that flexible leadership is so important. There's obviously there's a time and a place for compassion. There's a time and a place for kicking butt and taking names. We all learned that as chiefs, and it just really takes common sense to really think about how you're going to meet the challenge and in the community or command you're in. You have to take into fact the community. I'm talking sub, surface, air, whatever. Yeah. They all operate in a different culture. And then, how are you going to infuse your leadership styles into that? Yeah. Again, being flexible as a leader. And sometimes there's things you're going to have to do that you don't like, but in order to get the mission done, you're going to have to do it. And that's what really keeps you focused is the mission and doing what's right by the mission, but at the same time taking care of your sailors, which is and the relationship in the triad, all that is a challenge to balance. It really is. It's a challenge to balance. And when I was on Cole, I never went out to the chief's room. They had a chief's room where they decompress, do whatever. I told them I didn't want to know about it, that I'd go out and do ComRel projects and stuff because I had to worry about my own reputation as a command master chief, and keep together that perception of professionalism and whatever as a CMC working with his CO and XO and at the same time working with his mess. So again, that's how I operated. I mean, I went out with chiefs now and then, but I didn't want appearance of favoritism. I didn't want appearance of anything like that. So I always made sure when I was with my chiefs, it was a group scenario.
That's cool, man. It warms my heart to hear you say that because I've experienced both, and I have this big notebook. It just says Cobb notes on it, and I would. A lot of times I'd be sitting in a meeting or I'd be sitting in in the mess or just experiencing something or be post experience, like get off watch and something happened. And I'd go down and just write in my book, like when I'm a Cobb, this is how I'm not going to do it that way, or I'm going to do it this way to make sure. And that was one of the things that I always kind of I was the only guy that my Cobb's name was Cobb. It wasn't Mike or it wasn't James or it wasn't Tim. It was Cobb. I was never calling him by his first name unless we were doing a group event at his house or something. Like if we barbecued,
if you were off the ship or something,
yeah. But even in the mess when the doors closed, everybody's calling him by his first name, and it's just there's to me, I always looked at it the same way you just described it. Like there's got to be a degree of separation, and me and my last Cobb got into it a bunch of times because we would be in meetings and he would say things that were just him expressing his opinion, but it's like when you say that, it's not the individual talking, it's the chief of the boat. So it's you just influence the opinions of every chief in this room. So now my argument doesn't matter anymore because everybody's getting oh, okay, now this is what the Cobb thinks. And so I always thought that there needed to be that separation, you know what I mean? Where it's not that you're not part of it and you're not guiding it and you're not setting the tone and the culture, but it's there's still I can't have one guy coming over to my house watching football if I'm in that position, and then there's perceived favoritism, and it's just there's a lot of guys that it seems like they just try to treat that guy he's the leader of the mess, but he's also just a member of the mess, and it's not really, he's the leader, and it's to be that leader effectively, I always felt like there had to be that separation. So that's I'm glad you said that because it makes me feel like I'm on the right track in figuring that piece out.
It keeps you out of trouble for me. I thought
for sure.
And like on Cole, when I said, when I told the chiefs to go out, I'd get the news, for instance, the selectees or even the crew. And I took control of all the ComRel projects as a command master chief. I knew I could have had somebody else do it, but it was my way of being able to share time with the crew in a professional manner and a fun manner.
Yeah.
We're out there helping a local zoo, painting an old folks home, whatever, together.
That's cool.
But you're still building relationships in a personal way too. But you're still wearing that title as command master chief.
Yeah. Well, that's cool too. That's an interesting take on it, because you taking charge of a thing like that. I was always thinking to myself, and having never been in the position, it's hard for me to know for sure if I would have the bandwidth to do it, and if it's even the right answer. But from the division and department chief positions that I've been in, I'm looking up and I'm I feel in that position, there's things like that I could do to take something off of my chief's plates too. I need you to be a division chief, and I need you to take care of your sailors, and I need you to manage whatever collateral duties you have and maintenance and all those other demands on your time and bandwidth. It's I feel like I have a little more time to manage some things that like a zone inspection program or like a Comrel program or whatever, where it's like, I don't need to put that on a chief's plate that already is juggling flaming chainsaws. It's like, I could probably take some stress off them so they can be more effective by managing a program like that.
Exactly. Then you have other people in the command, other petty officers, whatever, that you may find may or may not have some related skill sets to help you with that. And they do. So that way you helping their evals out as well. And giving them some pluses. You don't take credit, give them the credit.
Right.
If you know what I mean, so that they can promote later down the road, but at the same time, learn how to run thing, Comrel project or whatever you may want to do as your own task. But at the same time, again, like I said, you're building relationships.
That's cool. I got like one last question that I've been waiting to ask someone like you. And I talked to Paul Kingsbury a little bit about it, but like, how do you think it's different in the mess, like back when you made chief to now? And like, what are some of the things that it feels like there's been a cultural shift just in having talked to some chiefs that made it in the 90s and seeing a lot of like conversations that happen on the internet, like where stuff comes out and you see all the old salts coming out with all this criticism with the back in my day comments. And it's like, what was it like back then? And how do you perceive it to be different? And is it like, what are the good and bad changes that you've seen?
Now, I think the worst thing that's happened is PC, political correctness.
Yeah.
And, there's a time and a place for that, but when it comes to being a leader in a warfighter environment, some of that has to be put to the side, and you've got to think like a warfighter.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that makes sense. And that's the difference I saw growing up. I mean, I'm not saying, the hitting upside the head kind of stuff or the physical stuff like we did back. They did those in those days.
Hazing.
Yeah. Well, even to motivate you as a crew member, like even when I was with the Marines as a Marine corpsman, there's nothing for a gunny to pop you upside the head, to get your attention.
Submarine diving officers of the watch, same thing. You got a helms and plainsman sit in front of you, and like back in the day, they like if they weren't paying attention to their panel or weren't on course, they'd get smacked upside the head by the dive. So, yeah, same thing.
And then I understand that questions have to be answered, but sometimes you get to a point where there's too much questioning. And I mean, questioning your decision making, questioning where you're going with this, and it gets back to a need to know.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't have time for those questions,
right?
Depending on the situation. You can't stand there and you've got flooding or whatever's going on and got somebody continually questioning. Either you know how to do it, or you replace a guy and have another guy step in.
Right.
And that's what I learned in this is that stuff can get you killed sometimes. If you're not sure, instead of asking a bunch of questions, you say, okay, step out. We're going to put somebody else in there right now. Doesn't mean you're messed up. It just means, you got more to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, like in that particular situation, I think the absolute right answer is just swapping people out. But as far as the constant questioning is like do you think, especially in your position, because it sounds like you did through training and just your leadership style, is you built enough trust with those juniors that when you were in a casualty situation, you were demanding things of them, they were just, you weren't having to deal with as much of that because they trusted that, CMC's he's on top of it. He's got our best interests at heart and we trust him with that. And so they're just going to listen. You know what I mean? Like you're not going to get as much of that pushback if they trust that you can answer that question later because we know he's pointing us in the right direction. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome. We got any save rounds or alibis, man? Anything else you want to talk about?
No, just keep our nation in prayer as we go through a difficult time in our country, as well as our armed forces, all services, as they also deal with not only the challenges of being defenders of our country, but also dealing with not only political, but health issues worldwide. I can't even imagine what it's like to be out there today as a leader. Having to lead with a silent enemy, a virus, as well as having to deal with the challenges of being mission ready. Yeah. So, I have a high respect for our military and our men and women out there. And in all the speakings that I've done, I have told these North Carolinians out here that question us or our military in any way, that we're in good hands, and that we can put our heads on that pillow at night and sleep comfortably knowing that we're protected by our military.
Yeah. Hey, man, thank you so much for doing this. I really, really enjoyed this, and I've been looking forward to it since we started talking, obviously, but just, this was like, I'm going to have to decompress for an hour after recording this, just thinking about all this stuff, because I mean, this was obvious. I mean, I joined the Navy in January 2002. So this is before my time. I mean, I was around when it happened. I was in college, but
1978 for me, and I was in the Army before that. Wow. In 1975, so yikes. I go way back.
Yeah, and then and I remember the first moment I felt like I was in the military instead of just doing. The Navy was going to be just an adventure for me. I was going to do 4 years and call it a day. But I showed up at MSA school in San Antonio, Texas, and when I was checking in, and I was scared and like intimidated, but I remember sitting there waiting for one of the staff members to come out, and we were in our dress whites, sea bag in our hand, and he was going to check us in and get us the barracks room. And I looked over, and there was pictures of two sailors sitting there, and it was like a memorial. And I asked him, like, what is that? And one of the chiefs explained to me it was MSSN Francis and MS3 Santiago, and explained to me what happened and who they were and why those pictures were there. And it blew my mind, because I'm like, they were cooks. Like, how did this happen? And then I remember doing the research afterwards, and that was the first time it felt real. I'm like, oh wow, like this FSAs,
FSAs and cooks. And actually, Francis's father is a North Carolinian, who lives down the road from me in Woodleaf, and her grave is at Salisbury, North Carolina, and I visited it. And here's another inside scoop on that: there's the whole section she's in is full except for one grave next to her. Wow. And that's for her father, who is a retired chief petty officer and a retired state patrolman. But Clinton asked him if he could do anything, and Ron Francis, his name, the Gold Star father, said, I would like to be buried next to my daughter when that time comes. And so they left that grave open. That's
amazing. That's so cool. Yeah, man. Oh God.
And Santiago actually has the galley area of the USS Constitution named after him.
Oh wow!
And the reason why
my best friend in this world is the chief on Constitution right now. So
ask him about it. And the reason why they did that was because he actually served before Cole on the Constitution. And one night, I saw him using a what the heck is it called? You shoot the stars. I'm blanking right now.
You shoot the
sextant.
Sextant. Gotcha. Okay.
I got you now, bud.
Yeah, you're.
Anyway, but here I see a cook up there using a sextant. Man, I'm going, what the heck? I don't even know how to use one of those.
Yeah.
So I went up to Santiago and said, "Where'd you learn this?" He says, "On the Constitution. I served there before here." I said, "No kidding."
Yeah.
So so that's why they named the galley section after him.
That's outstanding. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'll definitely talk to my buddy about that. Yeah, man, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Same here. It's an honor. And like I said, just email me your info so I can send you that coin.
Absolutely. I will. Thanks so much.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that. One of my favorites. That was really cool. I really enjoy having conversations like that. And it's something that, like I mentioned in the interview, that I want to spend more time doing when I get back around to being able to, and when, like the COVID restrictions and stuff eventually relax, where I can actually access these people. But just getting that type of living history and the lessons that can be pulled from the people that were around back then, the sailors and Marines and airmen and soldiers that were doing all of the incredible things that we read about and learn about on our way up. I really, really enjoy getting to hear those stories directly. And it's, there's only so long that you get to do that because of the generational and time difference, right? So had a lot of fun. I really, really appreciated him doing that and taking the time. And I hope you guys got a lot out of it as well. With that, if you need anything from us, like always, hit us up. Don't give up the ship podcast at gmail.com. You can Facebook message us, Don't Give Up the Ship Podcast, or you can DM us on Instagram or Reddit at DGUTS or our DGUTS Podcast and you DGUTS Podcast, because we have a sub, and then that's my like handle or whatever. You can get a hold of us on all of those things, and then engage in discussions and stuff on those platforms as well, especially Reddit. So come check us out there. Like, share, subscribe, review, all the things. And then if you guys want to support us at all, it helps us pay the bills. You can go to dgutspodcast.com/shop, pick up some like a shirt or stickers or whatever. It's not for profit. It just helps us pay the bills. So if you want to do that, check that out. And that's it. That's what I got for you today. Thank you so much for listening, and don't give up the ship.